Releasing the Quadratus Lumborum, coming up next. Hey, Cat Matlock here at FreeBody Massage in Asheville, North Carolina. And the Quadratus Lumborum release is so awesome. It affects everything in the body. So the QL, just a little anatomy talk here, the QL, Quadratus Lumborum, goes from the lowest rib along the transverse processes of the lumbar spine, and then the top rim of the pelvis, all this in the back of the body, obviously. The Quadratus Lumborum lifts the hip or pulls someone down in a side bend, basically effectively bringing the pelvis and the rib cage closer together on the side. One key thing about the QL is that it also stabilizes the lumbar spine. So let's talk about how those things affect each other, right? The QL pulling in a side bend. Well, if you have a client who's constantly kind of standing with their weight to one side, that hip gets jacked up and the QL gets chronically short, and then kind of opens up the transverse processes on the other side of the spine, pulling that QL long. And again, muscles that are pulled long are always unhappy. They're always going to contract more to try to pull the body back the way it's designed to be. Those muscles and those bones are designed to be in orientation. So one side QL being short, the other side being long, that is going to show up with people with a leg length inequality or a hip height inequality. One hip sits higher than the other, with either true scoliosis or functional scoliosis, which means that they, over patterned habitual patterns of posture over time, gave themselves scoliosis. People who cross their legs, and that top leg, that hip is always going to be jacked up a little bit. A myriad of reasons, right? So that function of the QL lifting the hip or drawing the rib cage and the pelvis toward each other on that one side in a little bit of a side bend leads to a host of issues. And it constantly or regularly happens with folks with posture standing with their weight to one side. Another piece of the QL puzzle that's super helpful to understand is that Quadratus Lumborum stabilizes the lumbar spine in movement. It stabilizes the lumbar spine when you walk, every step you take. So it's gripping the lumbar spine for stability in movement. So your client might say, I get up, I start walking around, I feel okay, and then after I'm walking or hiking or running for a period of time, I start getting whatever the symptom of QL pain referral is, which is often a lightning-like or electric-like kind of zing at the SI joint. Any kind of SI joint dysfunction could be radiating pain along the edge of the sacrum. They might think they're getting sciatica, and the QL can lead to sciatica because it pulls that one side of the spine down, opening up the other side, pushes the discs out to the opposite side, and then can effectively push the disc into the nerve root and cause sciatic pain. So, but this piece about it stabilizing the lumbar spine is really important and often missed, because your client is going to say, I get up in the middle of the night, I step, and I feel fine in bed. As soon as I step and put weight on my body, I have to get down on the floor and kind of crawl. If I crawl, I'm fine, right? Oh, you're going to think immediately QL, because walking on hands and knees takes all the weight off the lumbar spine. So they're going to be able to do that. They're going to be able to crawl, but they're not going to be able to walk or run or move with weight bearing on that lumbar spine. So lights will go off, ding, ding, ding. That's QL. So the QL, so good, such good releases, because if you know really specifically where to go, and that's my jam, is showing you very specifically where to go to release the Quadratus Lumborum. There are 5 main points in the Quadratus Lumborum. So in this video that you're going to see me go up against that low rib, get in the corner, have them move, wiggle their butt side to side, or slide that one hip up and the other hip up. That movement helps the trigger point to release. So key indications: weight bearing is painful, that pain at the SI joint has an electric-like quality, or they just have SI joint discomfort. They have low back pain or low back instability. They have a hard time getting up from sitting for a long period of time. Psoas is going to be involved. And anytime you're working in the psoas, you also want to work in Quadratus Lumborum, because the psoas and the QL, psoas at the front of the spine, QL at the back, slightly more lateral than the psoas on the back of the spine. They snuggle up to each other, they spoon each other, they love each other, and they weave into each other. So if the psoas is jacked up, the QL is jacked up. And remember, the psoas gets jacked up from stress. Anytime we have a stressful experience and we go into a sympathetic activation or a fight or flight response, even just a little bit, even excitement, the psoas gets ready. It's ready for you to run or punch or to curl in to protect your internal organs. That curling pulls the QL long and loads the QL with trigger points. So here comes Quadratus Lumborum releases coming up now. Treating the Quadratus Lumborum is really helpful to just spend a little time gliding down the erectors, watching your body mechanics, keeping your pelvis behind your work, your weight behind your work. So I'm going to start treating on the right side. And I'm just trying to smooth out those erector bundles. What you'll find often if people have a hip height inequality, so we found that Kayla's left hip here sits a little higher. And what you'll find is that the erector bundles on that high side are going to be a little stringier and a little more pronounced, right? See that? You can see that that erector bundle is more pronounced. And what that means is just that happens because when that pelvis sits higher, all the erector bundles are shortened a little bit and the other side is pulled long a little bit. And over time, these bundles get a little stronger than these, a little stronger, a little, like that's smooth. I can go down here, that's smooth, right? But this side is not smooth. It's thicker through those erectors. And that's common on the high hip side. So Quadratus Lumborum, treating Quadratus Lumborum, there are 5 points in the Quadratus Lumborum. And I also like to work in T11, 12, erector right above that. So the first thing I do is I palpate and find her lowest rib. So here's her low rib here. And so I know that that's T12, right? And I'm going to go just above that spot. And I'm going to just sink my thumbs. And it's real ropey here. So if you're having a hard time getting a hold of it without strumming like that, you can place one hand as a stabilizer and sink. And what I'm doing is kind of squeezing that thumb as I'm going down. Or you can do it by getting your elbow there and using that stabilizer, right? So I'm right there. I got my little mark right there. And I'm going to put my elbow right in that. And whenever you want to use your elbows, you start with the arm at about 90 degrees. You begin to sink in, just sinking slowly, and then you begin to lift the hand. And that drives the point of your elbow into the tissue. I'm going to sink in right there. Do you want more or less pressure?
It's good.
Okay. And please let me know when that starts to feel easier. Mm-hmm.
That's good.
Great. All right. And then we glide down. She indicated that it felt good and does feel even smoother now through there. Great. So of course not rubbing on the spine, but I'm just kind of going down the groove and along the erectors there. And then following that lowest rib, kind of tracing that lowest rib, you want to come out to the edge of QL, right? QL is all along here. So I want to sink in about halfway down that QL. So I'm just kind of along the spine, and then I want to slide up it until I bump into that lowest rib. And how's that? Is there a tender spot there? Not everyone has this point. Is there a tender spot there? Nope, she doesn't have it there. So what I might do is just kind of go out a little further and angle up into that rib. Is there anything there that's tender? So that's tender, more tender on her. So I just glide it out along that lowest rib. And just taking a few breaths here. You can hold the points for up to 1.5 minutes. And you can have them engage the muscle, or you can just have them breathe. And different folks, if it's really, if they don't have a lot of body awareness, it might be difficult for them to do the movement. Is that feeling any better? Okay. So now that we have our location of that lowest rib, we're going to slide up along it and angle toward the opposite shoulder. See how I'm directing my thumb angle toward the opposite shoulder? I'm going to give myself a supported thumb. And I'm down in that QL. I'm not all the way up here in the erectors. I'm down along the edge of that soft tissue. I can feel the edge of QL there. And I'm angling a bit toward the opposite shoulder, more like the opposite armpit. And then once I sink down, then my pressure goes that way. And is there a tender spot there, Kayla? Okay. And do you want more or less pressure? A little more. So I'm straightening my arm and I'm just going to sink my body weight forward. That's good, she said. And she's just going to breathe here for a few moments. And then I'm going to have her engage the QL. So Kayla, I want you to bring your attention into your right hip. And now I want you to slide that right hip up toward your shoulder. Keep it on the table, but it's almost like you're just kind of sticking your butt out to the side, to the right, other direction, yep. And then back. And so see if you can keep this here. Think about sliding up this way. Yes, that's it. And then down. It doesn't even need to be that big. And push that hip away. And that as you go down there, you go up and then down and push that hip away. It kind of pushes into my thumb, yeah? And makes it a little more exciting. So again, you can choose how spicy it gets here. Little engagement, push it away. And what you'll find if you give them permission to choose how much pressure there is, you'll see their range of motion will start getting bigger. And then you know that the tissue is releasing. Yeah, how's that feeling?
A lot better.
A lot better, great. And now we're going to just slide down and do a couple points and then do some soothing. Couple points and then some soothing. Great. And so we did one trapped up onto the low ribs, one at the intersection of the low ribs and the QL. And now I'm going to go for a middle QL point. And the way that I like to find this one is I bump up to the spine, I slide just off those erectors, and I kind of push the erectors medially in toward the center. And often there's a spot right lateral to that. Is it tender right there?
Yes.
And so I want to protect that thumb, so I'm going to do a supported thumb. I'm going to sink straight down toward the floor on this one and very slightly medially toward the spine. And Kayla, would you start that movement again, sliding the hip just a little tiny bit, that's it. And then slide it away, up. And I want you all who are watching this to see when her range of motion gets bigger. Go ahead, keep going. And I can feel that QL contracting underneath. Do a couple more. Lift and down. Lift and down. Push it away. Last one. And down. Yeah. And see how that got bigger right there at the end? Because it's feeling more comfortable, she can push into it a little bit more. And then we soothe. And this whole area is feeling, this is the smoother side already, but this whole area is just feeling a little bit easier. So we have 2 more points in the QL on this side. And now we're going down to the bottom corner where the QL intersects the ilium, the top rim of the pelvis. And you try to get in there as much as you can. And then what I'll ask my client do, Kayla, could you kind of slide that right hip away, even maybe lift the right leg and make it really long and reach with that right foot. See how that opened up that spot there? Now you can relax that leg and just keep it right there. For this point, I don't typically have them do the lift and push away of the hip. I don't have them engage the muscle, or else it's going to kick me out because it's just such a little window that I have right in there. And do you want more or less pressure in there, Kayla?
Oh, that's good.
Good pressure, okay. Just take a couple belly breaths. So remember, when we are belly breathing, we're softening the psoas, and the psoas and the QL are spooning. They're just hugging on up to each other. So you want to really be mindful that when we're belly breathing, when the client is belly breathing on the table, first of all, it brings more breath to the back because the belly is compressed onto the table. And as you're helping the psoas to release, you're also helping the QL to release. And how's that point feeling now? Is that feeling any easier?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Hey, quick pause in this video. Cat Matlock here at FreeBody. I'm so glad you're here. And I just want to point out a couple of things. Down in the description of this video is a link to my online classes for continuing education credits. I'm nationally certified NCB-TMB, so most states will accept those classes as continuing education. Also, go ahead and subscribe and like this video. Put a comment down if you learned anything from this video, or if you have a question about any of the information. I do look at comments and I do answer questions.
Do a little soothing. We have 1 more point to go on this QL. So we did up into the low rib, in the corner, in the middle, in that corner. We're just kind of making a little half circle. And now we're going to follow that QL down along to its edge to where it attaches onto the top rim of the pelvis. So now we want the pressure directed toward the feet. And is there anything tender there, Kayla? I'm just trying to trap right along the pelvis. I'm scooping that QL tissue. More there? Okay. And how's that pressure?
It's good.
Okay. And just 2 times, I want you to start to lift that hip up. I can feel that muscle contract and then slide it away. Yeah, good. 1 more time. Lift up and slide it away. And how's that point feel now? Does it feel any easier?
Yeah.
One thing is that Kayla is very well hydrated. She drinks a lot of water. And so her tissue will release a lot faster than someone's who doesn't. So the QL lifts the hip up toward the shoulder, and then from along the top rim of the pelvis, we have gluteus medius that pulls the hip
down. So they're in a little opposition to each other. So I always like to do just a little bit of soothing if I'm not going to treat gluteus medius, just kind of along that top rim of the pelvis, because the gluteus medius will be affected a little bit by this release in the QL. Oh, it's so much smoother. I'm going to go down along that low back now. Feel the difference between the two sides. So good. Okay. And so now we're going to do a kind of shorter version on the other side. We're going to do all 5 points, and we're just going to hold each point for a couple of breaths. So QL on her left side. Doing a little warming, and I kind of notice, I like to use this time to notice how those erectors feel. Gliding down along, I like to notice, oh, does it feel like the vertebrae are in line with each other? It feels like she's got a little vertebra out right here. So I'm just going to kind of press right next to it. Sink down a little bit. Is that pressure okay? Just doing some soothing with the other hand. I like to use my forearms when I work too. Just being mindful of not going right over the spine. And give your hands a break. You can get a gentle elbow along those erector bundles. That'll feel really good. She's nodding, so we'll take that as a yes. So finding the lowest rib. And I'm just going to talk through locating these points. Here's the lowest rib. So I slide down into the meat in between the rib and the pelvis so that I can kind of sink back toward the center and feel where that QL is. Once I feel that edge of the QL, if I'm out here, see, I just keep going to the floor. So I want to just find that edge, and then I'm going to glide up along it and trap up to the lowest rib. And how about there? Is there any tenderness there, Kayla? No? And I'm going to go a little wider just to check and make sure.
Oh, yeah.
There it is. And just a couple of breaths here. Great. And then I'm going to slide up along that lowest rib till I bump into the intersection of the QL. When I start to get where it's thick, and then I angle toward that opposite armpit. And how about there?
Yeah.
Okay. More or less pressure?
A little tiny bit more.
A little bit more. So I just make sure my arm is straight. And I'm going to sink in forward with my body weight, not pushing, sinking my body. And Kayla, if you'd like to start that slide of the hip up, and then push it down and away. Yeah. A couple more times. It's a really key point. Most people have this point at least on one side, often both sides. I can feel it contracting underneath me. Is that getting any easier?
Yeah, much.
Great. Okay, much easier. So she can relax. Okay, that's 1, 2. And then for the third point, find that middle section of the QL. Glide the thumbs down the erectors till you get just over that edge of the erectors. And then push them in a little bit toward the spine. And then sink your pressure straight down. How about right there? Yep. And I didn't have to sink down very much. She's got some tenderness here. She's got some tension in this spot. And then my other hand's just either soothing or holding steady pressure. You want to do a little lift of the pelvis, slide that hip up. Yep, and then slide it away. Ooh. Slide it up. Ooh. Slide it away. Let's just do one more. See how her range of motion is getting bigger already, though? And slide it away. And relax. Good. Alrighty. Did that feel better at the end? Got better? Okay. I was just going to point out where the points are, but I decided I wanted to treat them because this is her high side. This is the side that the QL is shorter and tighter on. So I wanted to make sure that I gave a good release for this. So I'm going to actually raise my table a little bit. Sometimes I work with the table pretty high for the QL. And so now I'm going into that bottom corner, right where I feel the top rim of the pelvis come in. And then, Kayla, I'd like you to lift up that left leg and stretch it really long to open up the space. Slide that left hip open. There you go. And then right back down. And see, it opened up that space for me. Now I can sink my thumb into that point. And you let me know, is there any tenderness in there?
A little bit.
Okay, she said a little bit. I'm expecting there to be perhaps a little more. So I'm just going to fish around a little bit. This work is all about angles. So I might come up and shift my angle. That's it, yeah. Because this is her high side, I expect her QL to have a lot of points. So it was just a little tender the first point, so I wanted to, again, just kind of shift my angle and try different directions. 90 degrees to the tissue is how we work with trigger points, 90 degrees. And then, is that feeling better? And I'm going to slide down, turn my body so that now I'm facing, always want my body facing the direction of my work. I glide along that outside edge of QL, and then I see if there's anything up against that ilium. How about there? Yeah, she said yep. Some nice slow deep breaths in the belly. I'm going to take my left hand away so that you can see I'm just trapping right against the top of the pelvis. Is that easier now? Great. It's so wonderful working with someone who's hydrated and active because their points tend to release much faster. Okay. Then I want to do just a couple glides along this gluteus medius. With the QL being kind of short on the side, the gluteus medius and minimus are going to be pulled a little long on this side because the QL is pulling that top rim of the pelvis up, pulling it away from the greater trochanter or the femur, and the gluteus medius and minimus go between the top rim of the pelvis and the greater trochanter. So when this is lifted, the erectors get short, glutes get pulled a little long. So I would expect her to perhaps have more hip issues, maybe more sciatica type symptoms, iliotibial band syndrome. That kind of stuff tends to happen on the high side. Okay, great. And so now we've treated the 5 points in each Quadratus Lumborum plus a little bit around T11, T12 in those erector bundles to help them release a little, and then through QL. And then you might grand finale with just some nice soothing, maybe some compression in the glutes, and that would be the end of the treatment.